people, and welcome back to Wine Chat. My name is Emma and I'm a certified sommelier with a mission to spread wine knowledge and to help you drink better. Today we are diving into the chat on the 1855 classification of Bordeaux. What is it? Why was it made? And does a classification that is over 150 years old still matter today? Let's chat about it. The 1855 classification of Bordeaux is a ranking system that separates the top chateaux into 5 categories, also known as growths. It was put together at the request of Emperor Napoleon III for the Universal Exposition in Paris. Brokers from the wine industry ranked their chateaux according to their trading price. The classification, which still stands today, includes 60 chateaux from the Medoc and 1 from Graves. But that's not to say that wine wasn't being produced in other areas of Bordeaux. Graves actually has a much longer history of winemaking than the Medoc, and Cheval Blanc in Saint-Emilion and Canon in Fronsac were both 2 highly regarded chateaux at the start of the 1800s. However, the Medoc was the first area to truly grasp the 18th century revolution in wine quality. Therefore, wines from the Medoc could command a higher price. Now, the chateaux in the 1855 classification all come from the left bank of Bordeaux. Now, there's 2 main areas here. We have the Medoc, where most of the chateaux come from, and this contains the sub-appellations of Haut-Medoc, Saint-Estèphe, Pauillac, Saint-Julien, Margaux, Lestrac-Medoc, and William-Medoc. Graves, which is also on the left bank, just a little bit further inland, lends 1 chateau to the classification. Now, all of these wines are based on Cabernet Sauvignon, but they are all Bordeaux blends, so they will have a little bit of maybe Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, or Carmenère blended into the wines. The top wines in the classification, also known as first growths, are Chateau Latour, Chateau Margaux, Chateau Lafite Rothschild, Chateau Haut-Brion, and Chateau Mouton Rothschild. Now, one of the reasons people may not like the 1855 classification is because it was put together in 1855. Even then, it only took them 2 weeks to put the whole thing together. Since then, there's only been 1 major change and just a few smaller tweaks. The original classification consisted of 58 chateaux, which has now been expanded to 61 thanks to the division of some of the original estates. For example, Chateau Pichon Longueville, which was the original name, was then split up into Chateau Pichon Longueville Baron and Chateau Pichon Longueville Comtesse de Lalande, which, fun fact, is one of my personal favorite Bordeaux chateaux. This is because if an estate can trace its lineage back to the classification, it can retain its Cru Class A status. Baron Philippe de Rothschild, who ran Chateau Mouton Rothschild from 1922 until his death in 1988, made it his life mission to get Chateau Mouton Rothschild upgraded from a second growth to a first growth. For years, the phrase, "First, I cannot be. Second, I do not deign to be. Mouton, I am," was printed on its labels. Finally, in 1973, Chateau Mouton Rothschild was upgraded from a second growth to a first growth, making it the only chateau to change position. After this, the phrase on the labels was changed to, "First I am, second I was, Mouton does not change." Another problem that people have with the 1855 classification is that it is based on what the chateaus own and not defined by a certain vineyard outline or terroir. Unlike in Burgundy, in which the Grand Cru and Premier Cru designations are very much defined by the terroir and the super strict vineyard outlines. It is the vineyards that carry the designation, not the domains or the estates or the chateaus. So in Burgundy, if you own a Grand Cru vineyard but then you sell it, you no longer own the Grand Cru. However, in Bordeaux, if for example Chateau Latour was to buy some more vines in Pauillac from a little unknown producer, they could use those vines and those grapes to make their first growth wine without any regard for how great the vines may be or the terroir. Again, this is a very super simple example, and most chateaus do use a better plot of land or better vines to create their top tier wines. As you can imagine, since the classification was done in 1855, nowadays there are some incredible chateaus that are making amazing wines that is worth well beyond where they are actually ranked. And not just chateaus from the Medoc or from Graves, but all over Bordeaux, and especially on the right bank in places like Saint-Emilion and Pomerol. For example, Pomerol contains some of the most expensive wine in the world from wineries like Petrus, Le Pin and Constelliant. If the classification was to be done again and looked at the whole of Bordeaux, the classification would look entirely different. There is a further informal little grouping of chateaus, also known as super seconds. They are mostly second growths, and these are wines that can match the quality of the first growths in some years. And these include the chateaus of both Pichon Longueville Baron and Pichon Longueville Comtesse, Lévaux Las Casses, Lévaux Baton, Drucourt Caillou, Cos d'Estenau, Chateau Montrose, third growth Chateau Parma, and fifth growth Chateau Pontacinet and Chateau Lynchbage. As you move up in the ranking, the prices definitely rise. From a quick look at Berry Brothers' website here in the UK, for a bottle of a first growth, you'll be looking at, for example, a bottle of Chateau Margaux 1990 for £1,277. A bottle of Chateau Mouton Rothschild 1986 for £1,500. And a bottle of 2004 Chateau Latour for the cheap price of £440. These are wines that have been designed to age, and waiting that extra 20, 30, 40 years is definitely well worth the wait. But is it really worth saving up all your hard-earned money to splurge on these wines? Well, as someone who has been honoured and lucky enough to try all the first growths and try honestly most of the wines in the 1855 classification, I would personally save your money and go for a cheaper wine within the classification or another wine from somewhere else in Bordeaux. However, if you have the money to spend and you really want a special bottle, you do make sommeliers like me very happy. They are very special wines, especially the first growths, especially when they've had time to age and develop and get a little bit more kind of complexity to them. They can be really quite magical. And as a good entry point, look at the chateaus in the 4th or 5th classification. Chateaus that I really like are some like Chateau Pédescalot, Chateau Calon-Ségur, or Chateau du Haut-Millon. These are wines that I've had and you can normally find in a restaurant for a couple of £100 or in a wine shop for much, much less. And this is a really great introduction to the classification system. But does the 1855 classification of Bordeaux really matter? Well, yes and no. Yes, it matters because it was a historical event and it's something historical that's been able to stand the test of time. And you would hope that these chateaus, because they can command a slightly higher price point because they're considered to be more prestigious, that they would be producing better wine because they can put their money back into winemaking technology or hiring better winemakers or having the most perfect vineyards. But it really shouldn't matter for you as a consumer. If you are at a restaurant or in a wine shop and you're looking for a Bordeaux wine, don't get caught up in the classification system. There are wines from all over Bordeaux, some which are in the Graves classification, the Saint-Emilion classification, wines that are completely outside of that. And lots of them are absolutely incredible and for a fraction of the price. Even looking elsewhere in France to places like Southwest or Languedoc-Roussillon, where they also have Cabernet Sauvignon dominant wines, these wines can be a lot more attractive with a lot more body and soul, and they just don't have that prestige to say, I come from Bordeaux, or I'm part of the 1855 classification. They don't have that, and so they're so much cheaper and often so much better. So don't get caught up in the classification. It's great to know if you want to know your wine history, but if you just want a really delicious, incredible bottle of wine, don't get too caught up on it. Well team, that is all from me today. I hope you enjoyed this video on the 1855 classification of Bordeaux. Let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite Bordeaux wine that you've ever tried? And if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more upcoming wine education. Until next time, remember, drink better, be better.